This is today's project. It's, well, at the moment anyway, it's an end of terrace house, but it's part of this complex of buildings, and it was not built as a house. It's on an old mental hospital, so I believe it was a ward. Not quite sure why there are all these external doors. They might well have been windows at some stage in the past, but as an ex-medical building, it's a little bit unconventional. Mostly conventional, but a little bit unconventional. Well, anyway, there's the roof, and that's nice and straight. And we'll have a look at that inside. Made with massive timbers, but we can just about work out from down here that we've lost a very small number of tiles. If we go around the side next, this is the side elevation, and if you look closely at the brickwork, you can see it's a nice conventional Flemish bond, i.e. each course of bricks is stretcher, header, stretcher, header, stretcher, header. But the front and rear elevations aren't very conventional in that respect. Go around here, this is the rear elevation, to the extent this building has a rear elevation. And we look at the brickwork, you can see stretcher, 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 then the odd header, then another stretcher. Basically, he's gone freestyle, hasn't he, the bricklayer at this stage. It's a little bit more straightforward to the front, but still not proper regular Flemish bond. These walls appear to have been about 420 millimetres deep originally, so that's the depth of a pair of bricks, isn't it? Measured long ways, so obviously they're substantial interlocking brick walls. A conventional Victorian red brick house would have been 230 millimetres deep, so getting on for twice as thick as a conventionally built house. I don't suppose that's brickwork up there. It would be an awful waste of bricks if you're going to apply render over the top, so probably some cheap aggregate block work up there. Sun's in my eyes, so there's only where I can go to look at the chimney without blinding myself. Get the sun directly behind the chimney. That doesn't really help at all, does it? That's a better view of the chimney. It looks alright, doesn't it? It's just a brick chimney, brick oversailing courses. 4 pots to the top, indicating there's 4 fireplaces down below, and what are probably modern lead flashings, and I think the bottom this side you can see a slot where there used to be flashings before, so that probably introduces a little bit of a risk of a rain penetration problem there. And then the rainwater pipes are again a little bit unconventional for a residential property. Not so much the gutters, but that downpipe's massive, isn't it? Looks like they might have been leaking a little bit. If we can possibly see, there's a bit of rust staining on the woodwork under the gutter junctions, so they are rusting a bit and leaking a bit. The windows in this house throw all sorts of curveballs in a surveyor's direction, and will be a bit of a problem for anyone living in the house, which we shall look at later. But you can see the windowsills there are a bit peculiar, aren't they? Sort of form over function, so you don't have a nice clear drip for water to come off. And perhaps in response to that, maybe the person who redeveloped has put those sort of lead aprons underneath to stop damp penetration into the wall immediately under the window, kind of implying that the windowsills are letting water leak back onto the wall. There's evidently been a little bit of an alteration there as well. Windows are a bit of a conundrum in this property. To an extent they are what they are, but building regulations require upper floor windows, this is the front right bedroom, to be a maximum of 110 centimetres above the floor level, so you can climb out. Well, the distance there to the underside of the opening part of that window is 140 millimetres, 140 centimetres. So that, well, it doesn't meet building regulations, but so many windows don't. The other issue with all these windows is if it's locked, you've got to do a lot of clambering around to unlock it before you can attempt to get out. So not a very good window in terms of escape from fire. These windows don't work. Once you get out here though, this is a landing, you're back within regulations. And that is equally the case with the windows at the back, where you've just got about, well, it's a metre, literally 1 metre between the floor and the underside of the window. Now what I think would be a major nuisance to anybody living here is, we're back in the living room now. If you want to open the window, the opening parts are up there. You would literally need to get a ladder, and most people would need to get a ladder, I think. Most women and a substantial proportion of men would just not be tall enough to reach that without climbing on something. And if you're in the kitchen, where you're making a lot of mess and smoke and all the rest of it, you want to open the kitchen window, you've got the same problem, and you've got the kitchen sink in the way. So that's going to be a massive pain in the arse, I should think. As an Edwardian building, I would have expected to find some sort of damp-proof course in the walls, but I can't find one. This possibly is because, you know, the ground there, you can see just about. Maybe if I go that way you can see it better. Get out of my shadow. The ground seems to be marginally above floor level, so if the damp-proof course is in a conventional place below the surface of the ground, it will have been buried by gravel, which isn't going to help. So one should be alert to the possibility of a dampness problem internally. And this is the front door, and we've got a bit of decay to the bottom of the frame there. This obviously needs redecoration, and all these little splits. It's a nice hardwood door frame, but it's got lots of little splits in it, which is going to encourage rain penetration, and then timber decay. So here's our front wall, and it's 450mm deep. Let's get in there out of the sunshine, and that's very probably, almost certainly, got a plasterboard dry lining to it. The back wall, however, is about 420mm deep, and sounds quite different, doesn't it? I don't know whether you can pick it up here though. We do have cracks going in various different directions, so this is sometimes referred to as map cracking, as if the plaster's shrunk in several directions. Maybe it hasn't shrunk at all though, it's just loose old plaster coming off the wall. So maybe the plaster at the front end was much worse condition, which is why it was replaced. But here, there, nice firm plaster come across the wall where all that cracking is, and plaster's hollow and off key. As discussed, the ground outside is at about floor level, and there's no sign of a damp-proof course. So one is kind of anticipating, especially where the wall isn't dry-lined, to find some dampness. Is my phone going? So the front elevation is dry-lined, and you know, limited access to it anyway, but where probed it is dry. This elevation's got those messy stains on it. It looks like someone's been splashing booze around rather than that being anything to do with moisture from outside. Anyway, so we've got a solid wall here, possibly a buried damp-proof course, in which case dampness might be an issue. Are we focusing on my damp meter? Let's, I think we are, yeah, okay. And it's all right, isn't it, there? And to be honest with you, I've had a jolly good probe around already, and there's nothing going on. So if the damp meter gets excited now, it's just going to be embarrassing. So I suspect there is a damp-proof course in these walls. It's probably been nobbled by high ground levels, but there seems to be enough depth in the wall for this moisture not to have found its way all the way through relatively dense brickwork. Would be a good idea to lower the ground outside though. There's my regulation issue 3-metre surveyor's ladder, which as you can see doesn't reach the loft hatch, so I won't be able to climb in. So let's see how much information I can garner from standing on the ladder in a manner which doesn't involve falling out and killing myself. Sorry about that beeping. Here is the roof. We have a roof ridge, and we've got rafters attached to the roof ridge, and then we've got a hip, 2 hips, well 1 hip, 2 hip boards, front and rear, and the rafters are extending from the hips down to a fairly substantial looking wall plate, the wall plate being the timber that sits on top of the external walls. But what we don't have is any tying together by the ceiling joists, and that's because this is where this roof differs, what's the word, I don't know, deviates, that's the word, from a conventional roof, in that we have, bizarrely, a concrete slab ceiling. It's not even a ceiling, is it? We've got a concrete slab sitting on top of the internal partition walls and forming the floor of the roof space. Anyway, apart from that, we then have purlins, upper and lower. There's the lower purlin, upper purlin up there. That purlin's sitting on little concrete brackets sticking out of the chimney breast. There's a great big collar over there. Difficult manoeuvring. I've got to stop myself falling out and hold a ladder in one, torch in one hand and a camera in the other. And we've got posts under that collar, extending down to what is a tie beam, so there is some tying together, although not at the hip end. It's unusual, isn't it? So, you know, the collarette, I suppose, and another vertical post under there. And then we have rather more conventional struts. I say rather more conventional, there are 4 of them sitting under the purlin there. So, big timbers, very robust, slightly unusual arrangement, and no timber ceiling joists. Apart from that, what else? There's little, I mean, I can see them, you probably can't, I'm not going over there, but it looks like little droppings of some kind of animal. So, rats or bats, I couldn't possibly say. And we've got a party wall built over there, out of plasterboard. The property's evidently been re-roofed because we've got a modern air permeable underlay beneath the tile covering. Right, and now I've got to get down. That's down a long way. See if I can get down in one piece. There's a little bit of Edwardian detail, so there were some nice ceramic tiles to the chimney breast before somebody smothered them in ugly modern plasterboard. But the point is, down below, here is down below, we've got the wall between the living room and the kitchen, and there is no chimney breast anymore. Not that side, and not that side. We do have a 300mm wall, but that wall now is supporting what remains of the chimney breasts and the chimney above. So has the builder supported that pointy front edge in any way? We don't know. We'll just have to assume it's happily sitting on this partition wall. And if the chimney breasts are sitting on that partition wall, then you only come forward probably less than 2 meters and you've got another great big wall, this one having been opened up. So it must have been a relatively difficult building to adapt for residential purposes, and there seem to be a few structures in here which don't really make a great deal of sense. Why need a little room like this? But bearing in mind these partitions have got to support a concrete ceiling, then perhaps that's why there's so much load-bearing masonry in the middle of the house or building. We've got what looks like a modern concrete floor to the front part of the building. Looks like concrete, sounds like concrete when you stamp around on it. And once you get through to the living room at the back though, that sounds very much like a timber floor, doesn't it? But we haven't got any air bricks outside, so timber ground floors should be ventilated. So that's another thing that seems to be ever so slightly wrong, but we have to bear in mind this is a modern conversion done in 2003, so hopefully building control sorted it all out at the time and everything's fine really. To what extent you'd want to report this sort of thing in your survey is a matter of opinion, but what we've got there, bottom left of the picture, is a piece of chewing gum, and if you look in the plug hole, can we see in the plug hole, it's pretty much clogged up with old nasty bits of chewing gum from days, weeks, months past. And so how much chewing gum is there in the waste pipes leading from this house to the drain? That's going to be a nuisance. Well, it's a nuisance now, isn't it? But certainly a potential big problem in due course. Well, I think that'll do really. So a robust building, bit quirky, bit awkward, but structurally sound as a pound in the round, or whatever that means.